Hi guys, welcome back to Snakes and Adders Reptile Advice. It's been a while since I've done this, but I had a comment arrive on the aspiration video we did the other day. I thought it was a good comment, raises a question, kind of follows on from where we were, puts a slightly different spin on it. It could have been a slightly leading question, it's hard for me to say definitively, but we'll have a go because I've got opinions on both sides of this. So, as a newbie to the hobby, I've come across two different types of elitists in the hobby. There's the ones which you're discussing here who predominantly seem to be from the bioactive is the best point of view, and then there's the 20+ years experience elitist with that I've done it this way for 20 years and I'm not changing attitude. There is a healthy middle ground between the two points of view, but in my opinion, the minimum requirements you get sold from many pet shops and online groups, in my experience anyway, is closer to the advice the 20+ years experience guys would give. For example, red nighttime bulbs, heat pads as a sole heat source, too small an enclosure, paper towel substrate. Would you guys agree that the minimum requirements for common beginner species are often too minimal? Any thoughts on this? Also, love your vids. So great to find a reptile channel that aims to educate rather than just entertain, with room tours and hoarding animals for content. So that was a great question. I forgot to get the name of the person. I'm ever so sorry. Normally I'd give the name. Let me pop that up there because then I can just refer back to it in case I get lost. The short version is you're absolutely right. There are two very separate camps and they are moving at opposite paths. It almost seems as one becomes more entrenched, the other becomes more entrenched, and we end up with, such as yourself probably and myself, feeling like we're occupying the no man's land in between. Whilst there is a push for advancement, there are also people, we've got a competitor in our hometown who seemingly stopped learning about reptiles in about 1985 and decided that everything that he needed to learn to be able to sell and keep reptiles he'd already learned, and he'd be damned if he was going to modernise in any way. And they are fools to themselves. They miss out on opportunities from a business perspective to be able to sell new lines and new products, but equally to try and advance the care that is and husbandry that is offered to the animals in their onward life from the shop. The problem that you've got is that for the advancement side, this is a very, or can be a very expensive proposition. And harking back to the aspiration video we did, where we're introducing kids and youngsters, which many of these advanced keepers were once upon a time, they have to start somewhere. Now, I posted something on Instagram actually the other day that caused a bit of heat regarding thermostats. And just going back to that was, I got a clever sort of counter response. Well, I use mercury vapor bulbs. I'll use thermostats as long as you're willing to pay for the replacements, wink. So for me, it's almost the inability, particularly, and one of the frustrations of this channel, is the inability of the advanced set not being able to acknowledge that the content that we put out is not for them per se. So it was a jokey comment about, I'd held a baseball bat and said, tell me you haven't got a thermostat one more time. It was supposed to just be light-hearted fun, bit of a joke. And the pithy comment about the mercury vapors. The problem is to put the nuance in leads to a convoluted, overcomplicated conversation, which it doesn't need to be. For beginners and novices, which 95% of the content on this channel is designed for, it is far easier for me to make a blanket statement about thermostats, not a nuanced argument about thermostats. If you want nuance, start a YouTube channel and make your own frigging videos. It's not my job to say what you want me to say. That's the short of it. I don't do as I'm told, I do as I please. There's a difference. And unfortunately, it seems that I don't know, like whether people are getting an idea that they've got some sort of hold over the content me and Paul put out. We say what we want to say, and if we hold something dear, we'll also say that and make no apologies for it. And we are equally treading the ground of wanting to try and advance things. So now leopard gecko kits are provided with UV and all this sort of stuff. Something else that came up was the heat pads. Oh, you can't keep leopard geckos on heat pads. They needed overhead heat. And the problem again is that the only reason that the advanced guys have got the products that they've got is because the mass part of the market is entering at the budget end of the spectrum, which are high product numbers, high profit, great turnaround. And we have 40 years of prior reptile keeping experience that dictates that you can keep a leopard gecko on a heat pad. It may not be as good as heating it from above, but to say that you cannot keep one on a heat pad is a lie, because we have proof that it's a lie. Are we saying it is the best way to keep? No. Where you can add nuance, and we can get into this middle ground where we're trying to navigate, is if I'm going to talk to someone who is going to have a rudimentary kit, they're potentially going to use a pad. They have a budget, they have budget constraints. Is it better for a shop to ensure that there is thermostatic control on that rudimentary kit? Of course it is. Are we making a blanket statement to that person saying you're doing this the very best way? Or would we be better providing deep heat projectors or ceramics? They're offered as an option. But as a shop owner, I can tell you definitively, the people that punt for the highest price tag items to be able to keep their animal when they're first introduced to this hobby are next to none. And that's just realism. You may not like it. It may twist your ovaries. You might get a bit all, oh my God, I can't believe. But the truth is that there will always be people entering this hobby. If there is an issue with heat pads, then you need to talk to the manufacturers, so whether that's Microclimate, Habitat, ProRep, and tell them that they need to stop manufacturing them. They will write you a very polite letter back saying, I'm sorry, but there is a huge demand for our ever so reliable heat pads, and therefore we have no intention of removing them from the market. Your point has started and finished immediately. What is better is to be able to offer a control system to stop them from burning and melting tanks and also incinerating your gecko when it's laid on top of it. The same way that the UV analysis that goes on states that compact UVs are a dog shit bulb. So write to Arcadia or Exoterra or any other person that makes a compact and tell them to stop manufacturing them. Reptile Systems, they're doing great things, releasing all these new products, but they're producing compacts. But everyone loves them because we've got in these advanced stuff, but they still make compacts. So they still have a budget range. Why do they have a budget range? Because there's a demand. So unfortunately, what we want and the standards that we want long term, we can't have immediately, because there has to be aspiration and the beginners, and they set themselves off on a trajectory to improve over the course of their career keeping reptiles. It doesn't all happen at once. And if somebody walked in here, like I said the other bloody day, it's like talking to a brick frigging wall sometimes. They come in, oh yes, well, we need to have you on this, bosh, bash, bosh, every top end, high range model. The shop that does that, that says, right, it's £450 for your leopard gecko kit with all the equipment you need, and we're going to give you a 4x2x2 viv and all the rest of it, you won't sell any. So we have to make the very best of a bad situation, or we offer them rudimentary setups with the equipment that will control the temperature to the parameters recommended for the species, and then they can learn and develop the practical skills to be able to keep a reptile properly. It's not necessarily for the hobby to mandate, oh well, you can't say this, you can't say that. I can say what I like, and I'll continue to say what I like. We'll continue to sell heat pads, and we'll continue to sell heat pads with thermostats because there's a demand for them. And when someone comes in and wants a deep heat projector, they can have one. And when someone comes in and wants a ceramic, they can have one. And when someone comes in and wants a halogen bulb, they can have one, or a mercury vapor bulb. However, or whatever it is that they require, they can have it. The minimum standards must be met. We're not saying it's a free-for-all. There are minimum standards. We discuss this all the time in the content that we do, which is temperature, humidity, height, social, environmental, all these other different things that we need to take into consideration to avoid stress and ensure that our animals progress the way that they should. Unfortunately, yes, we get the crozzled old crinkly keepers that have been doing it a very rudimentary way for a very long time, but they're not necessarily your concern. Your concern is the malnourished, the ill, the metabolic bone disease, the near death, the anorexic, the chronically mite infested, the respiratory infections. These are our concern. Also, the public optics of keeping 18-foot snakes in 6-foot vivs. That isn't right. And the problem is trying to sell that to the British public at large or the American public at large. We look like assholes. And to be honest, I can see why, which is why we changed our attitude towards it. The old school guys are going to do it their way, like it or not. And if they've been doing it 25, 30 years and the animals are alive, they may not be as, I don't know, spiritually enriched and, you know, nutritionally replete and all the rest of it. But that's their choice to do it that way. There's only so much you can control. And standing on a soapbox and barking and smacking people with a stick, getting them to change, generally just makes them do this. And that's part of the problem, that we end up with two sides doing exactly that. And there is this huge swathe of grey area that we can navigate between. And I've had some really great conversations over the years with people like Francis Cascari, who, you know, is one of the founder members of Advancing Herpetological Husbandry. And he's not a million miles off this page. He knows you've got to start somewhere and you've got to get somewhere else. And you lead by example. You lead with the carrot. You don't whip with a stick. And it is that combative attitude of the sections of the hobby that create this schism, this cavern that we can fall into, where you're in no man's land. You don't quite know, well, I don't want to do it in the rubs, but I don't want to do it in the bioactive super duper. Got to do this, got to do that, got to do the other. I've got to, you know, read like postgraduate degree level papers on UVB and all the rest of it to be considered a good keeper. It was never about that. We can bring them on. I mean, and the content we try to put out, whether it's breaking down Latin names, whether it's discussing the natural history of animals, whatever else, we're trying to do it in layman's terms, where you've got a broad Yorkshire kid stood in front of a camera trying to tell you these things, rather than being lectured using as many big words as possible and losing people, disengaging people. For the people that are advanced, this channel was never for you. So when you're piping up, pipe down. Crack on with what you're doing. And like, I'll try as best as we can to steer people from a rudimentary path onto a more advanced path. I mean, that's just talking from mine and Paul's perspective in the shop. We've changed the way that we do things. We developed the way we do things. But this shop was installed 12 years ago. This is a 2008 shop. And to be able to completely rejig the shop to be a 2020 shop would be a huge amount of money. So we have to build up to that. It doesn't all happen at once. And it doesn't matter how much you strop or pine or whatever. It doesn't change that fact. And we're constrained by the fact that we're a profit-making business. I make no apology for that. What I do give is my time freely to try and help with these videos, and Paul does with the research element of the videos, to try and make sure that we're offering advice that is viable and of use to people. So when you've got people from that advancing section being dicks, or you get the Hi Lee down in Wales doing it the way he does it, and they're both just combative and just raging at one another, like, you know, it doesn't solve a thing. There's plenty of wriggle room. And I'm not going to make these blanket statements. You mustn't use red bulbs. You mustn't use heat pads. You mustn't use paper towel. You mustn't use bioactive. You mustn't use metal halide. You mustn't do this, that, the other. If an animal is growing and it's developing, and we are happy that we're providing a controlled level of care, who am I to tell you any different? As long as you meet the criteria provided. I'm not going to get into dragged into, oh well, this paper does this, but and I've been doing it 30 years, and because that's just all, it's all shit. Lead by example. Allow people to aspire to improve. They will get there. It just might take them longer. They may have thicker skulls. It might not get through as quick. But if you lead, the rest will follow. Don't worry about turning around, screaming at people to catch up, because they'll just stop. And when they stop, you've lost them. If you insist on immediate advancement at the point of entry to the hobby, you kill the hobby dead. All of the products that you enjoy as an advanced keeper are only there because of all the entry-level products that are being bought, which is where the profit's really made. It's as simple as that. This is business, and the hobby is a business, and the wholesalers and the shops are profit-making entities. You can't change that. So expecting a shop to denounce everything that is profit-making is laughable. And any shop that postures that they're all about this and there's no business model or acumen or any time devoted to that would be lying to you through their teeth. And if you believed it, you'd be a fool. I've always found, as Paul has, to just be straight John Bull. We don't piss about. We just tell you exactly what we think. You don't have to like it. We don't have to care. It's just the way it is. We'll be back with another video soon, but I enjoyed that. I thought that was a good question, and there is two sides to it, and you're exactly right. And we have got two camps, and we do need to try and slowly bring them back together. But I'd sooner tell them both that you're being dicks, rather than agree with one side or the other. There is a middle ground where we can meet, and to be honest, a lot of people are moving into that middle ground, but it tends to be the most vocal, the ones with the most avarice, the ones that have I don't know, just some beef with everything, that start, and it's like, look, worry about your own animals and everybody else can worry about theirs. If we can raise standards bit by bit, that's an achievement. It's better than turning people off. And that combative nature is the one thing that holds a lot of people back and certainly puts a lot of people off online. So it's worth considering. We'll see you again soon with another video. See you later, guys. Peace.